Well, I think most of us can't wait for this season to be over and see what things, hopefully some changes are enacted in the offseason. And while I am looking forward to making content on the offseason rather than what we have so far going on right now, all the potential trades, free agency signings, what the future means for guys like DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, and Andre Drummond, who are all on expiring deals, but we're still finishing out this season, and without knowing the conclusion and result of this season, it's premature to start talking about the offseason. That said, though, based on these final few games of the year, we can start making some predictions on how the Bulls will finish out the year and what impact that will have on moves made this summer. And with 8 games remaining on the schedule at the time of this recording, with the Bulls now clinging on to that 9th seed that we thought they all but had locked up just a few weeks ago, is quickly dwindling right before our eyes as they now sit just a half game ahead of the Atlanta Hawks, a Hawks team that is playing much better basketball as of late, playing with a ton of confidence and super motivated before they get their star point guard back in Trae Young. And so in this video, I wanted to break down the final games of the year for both of the Bulls and the Hawks and the likelihood of the Bulls finishing with the 9th seed compared to the 10th seed, and we'll even visit the very slim chance of them reaching the 8th seed. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, of course, a big shout out to our sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy. One of the things that does cheer me up a bit whenever the Bulls play a bad game is seeing some of the winnings coming from a player prop prediction, and then also you guys sharing your picks with me. So if you're not familiar with Underdog, let me tell you about their app real quick, and my personal favorite that I use on the app, NBA Pick'ems. With Pick'ems, you can pick higher or lower on most player stats and win money based on the ones you get right. You pick higher or lower and you could win up to 20 times your money in a single night if you do 5 Pick'ems and you get them all right. Again, use the code BULLCENTRAL to get your deposit doubled. Link to the site and the code is in the description and in the pinned comment. It's also a great way to support the channel, which I truly do appreciate in difficult times right now of being a Bulls fan. But anyway, with the Bulls and their 8 games left on the season, they're currently sitting 35-39. They're a half game ahead of the Atlanta Hawks for the 9th seed. Again, at the time of this recording anyway, I'm recording this on Saturday before the Hawks play their game against the Bucks. But they're 4.5 games behind the Sixers for the 8th seed and 5.5 games behind the Heat for 7th. So the Bulls are going to be a play-in team. They're not going to be able to get up to 6th. Not a chance that happens, being 6.5 games behind the Indiana Pacers with 8 games left on the year. And while I'm sure there is some worry of that really bad loss the other night against the Brooklyn Nets, who are sitting 11th in the East, there is still not a chance the Bulls absolutely collapse in these final games and fall out of the play-in. Even after that loss, the Bulls are still 6 games ahead of the Nets, and the Bulls, in order to fall below them, would have to go 2-6 in their last 8 games, while the Nets would need to go 6-2. As bad as the Bulls have been playing, they're not going to win all but 2 games for the rest of the season, especially when they have somewhat of an easy schedule, and it's very likely a lot of those teams are going to be resting players down the stretch as their seeding gets locked in. What was a bigger blow to the loss against the Nets the other night is the Bulls could have narrowed the gap between them and the Sixers for 8th to just 3 games, as Sixers team that have been crashing and burning without Joel Embiid. And with just 3 games separating them and with 8 games left, again, still a long shot, but it would have been doable. But with 4 games separating them and the Sixers' remaining schedule where they have teams like the Raptors, Grizzlies, Spurs, Pistons, and Nets in front of them, it's all but out for the Bulls at this point to somehow make their way up to 8th and have 2 shots at the play-in to make their way into the playoffs. So the Bulls are going to be finishing with the 9th or 10th seed, which, let's be real, in the grand scheme of the season, doesn't really matter all that much which seed they ultimately finish, because they're still going to have to win 2 play-in games in order to get the 8th seed to take on one of the best teams in the NBA in the Boston Celtics. And they know that first matchup is going to be against the Atlanta Hawks. The only difference is it going to be at home versus it being away? Which I'd like to think is important, and it is, because you want the home team crowd and playoff-like atmosphere on your side in a win-or-go-home game. But with the Bulls, with this Bulls team, I really don't think it's going to mean much, because the team has been so inconsistent, playing at home or on the road, having great games in tough environments on the road, and then, of course, terrible losses at the crib, like against the Wizards and the Pistons. Now, I'm sure for the Bulls, they would prefer to host the 9-10 matchup, and I'm sure for the Bulls, they would also like to finish with that 9th seed just so the front office can have some sort of display of progress from last season, even though to all of us fans, going from 10th to 9th is not progress, but I'm sure they'll justify it in their own eyes that way. But whatever viewpoint your take is of it mattering or not, whether the Bulls host that first playing game or they play in Atlanta, here's where we stand. The Bulls, final 8 games. They're playing the Timberwolves, the Magic, the Pistons, the Wizards, and the Knicks 3 times, which is crazy. The Bulls still have 3 matchups against the Knicks to close out the year. And they are going to play the Atlanta Hawks one more time in a crucial game. So the Bulls have 5 of their remaining 8 games against teams above 500, and 5 of them being on the road. While the Hawks have 8 remaining games, of course, against the Bulls, Pistons, Mavs, Nuggets, Heat, Hornets, Wolves, and Pacers. And like the Bulls, they also have 5 of their remaining games, 8 games, against teams above 500. And also like the Bulls, they have 5 of their remaining games on the road. Now, the good thing for the Bulls is they already have the series tiebreaker over the Hawks, even if they lose against the Hawks on Monday night, because they already won those first 2 matchups between these teams. The other thing I'll say is that while both of them have the same number of opponents above 500 to finish out the year, the Hawks definitely have more challenging opponents than the Bulls do. Yeah, the Bulls have the Knicks 3 times, but the Hawks still have to go through Dallas, Denver, both on the road, Miami, who have been playing a lot better, and they themselves are going to be playing hard to try to get out of the play-in and into the top 6, and the same with the Pacers, who will be doing their best to stay in the top 6 and not let the Heat surpass them. So if I had to break it down and just purely predict each win-loss for both teams, for the Hawks, I know I'm probably stupid to think that the Bulls are going to win that game against them, especially on a back-to-back, but the Bulls have matched up well against them this season, even with Trae Young. Although I would argue the Bulls are actually probably a worse matchup for the Hawks when Young is playing because the Bulls lock him up so well. But regardless, I'm going to say the Bulls win that game. We'll say the Hawks beat the Pistons, take L's to both the Mavs and the Nuggets as well as Miami. We'll say they beat the Hornets, and I'm actually going to say that they beat the Timberwolves because the Wolves are likely going to be resting guys by that time. And then a loss to the Pacers, so that would have them going 3-5 in their remaining games. For the Bulls, which again, I don't even know how to predict anything with this team anymore, but I'm going to try my best here and just go with my gut and say that the Bulls lose to the Timberwolves, again, beat the Hawks. I actually think that they can win against the Knicks at the United Center, and just because I can't stand Magic fans and also because every game that they've played this season has been so close, I'm going to say the Bulls win in Orlando. They'll lose that second game against the Knicks. I really hope they can beat the Pistons and Wizards, but really you can't even view those as guaranteed wins. But they're bad teams that are likely going to be trying to lose for the rights to that top pick. So we'll say that those are wins. And then I'll say they'll lose that final game at MSG. So for the Bulls, I have them going 5-3 in these last 8 games, which would mean the Bulls would indeed finish with the 9th seed. Now, of course, the Hawks have been on a roll recently, but for them to actually surpass the Bulls, they, meaning the Hawks, would have to go 5-3 and see the Bulls go 3-5 at best, because the Bulls hold a tiebreaker. The Hawks would need to finish with a better record in these remaining games. Having both teams go 4-4, or both go 5-3, or both 3-5, whatever the combination is, that won't cut it for them. They have to finish off these 8 games with the hope that the Bulls would close out their season worse than they do. So if I had to guess, if I had to make a bet on where I think the Bulls will finish, I do still think it'll be the 9th seed, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they fall to 10th because nothing shocks me anymore with this team. But based on the schedule of both teams, based on the fact that I know the Bulls will keep playing their best players and not rest them, they will likely finish 9th. Again, does it really matter at the end of the day? No. I guess having a play-in game at the UC is nice since we didn't have any kind of postseason action at the crib last year, but to me, I still have a hard time seeing the Bulls getting their way out of the play-in regardless of it being the 9th or the 10th seed. I'll obviously have a more in-depth Hawks vs Bulls head-to-head matchup leading up to the play-in game, but in the meantime, let me know what you guys think the Bulls will finish by season's end. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.